All right, we're back on another episode of the BIC podcast under the watchful eye of Favre. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about very little about related of the NFL because outside of Bobbles, none of our teams are worth even barely discussing. I will make fun of my own team slightly, but other than that, we'll basically ignore most of the teams and we'll let Bobbles have his moment. Other than that, though, we'll talk about preparing for a card show since we do have the Dallas card show coming up here at the end of the week that we're recording this episode. And then next week is going to be the Expo. Next week, we'll probably talk a little bit more Expo specific stuff, but more in general. If you're preparing for the National, if you're preparing for a larger Dallas show, the Burbank show, or the Expo, if you have a bigger show coming up that you're planning for, what are some considerations and thoughts? And we'll talk a little bit about that. So that and more on this episode of the BIC podcast. Leaning into the staring Favre and the guitar riffs, I'm liking where this is going, Eric. I'm really appreciating the direction that this is being taken.
Yeah, I feel as if we had some Hollywood producers helping us out with this. This is big time.
It's all evolving, man. We even, like I said, we even got a fancy old overlay and everything. Dude, I don't even know what to do at this point.
This is getting way too professional for me, so I think I may have to bow out.
Mm-hmm. It's okay. Worst case scenario, we can always have a cardboard stand in, or we can use the technical difficulties picture that we've used in the past in your stead. So that's worked out. But that level of professionalism, what you should expect when you consider channel sponsor and friend of the channel, AMG Collectibles. Scrolling across the bottom of the screen on the video version, we've got amgcollectibles.ca and amgcardbreaks.com, which is now officially underway. Lloyd got his maiden voyage as far as getting a break of 2023-2024 Upper Deck Series 1. Products are flying off the shelves, and you get a chance to listen to the dulcet tones of the Newfoundland accent that Lloyd has. If you're not familiar with it, it's quite the thing to hear audibly. Now, mind you, I have been in a call center back in my heyday, and it's by far not even close to the strongest Newfoundland accent I've ever heard, but it is distinctive if you have not heard it previously. And Lloyd does a very good job getting through the packs and cards, and then there's going to be additional breaks. So if you want to check it out, you can go to that website and also the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, where you can see previous breaks and then some additional box breaks as new products come out. Upcoming this week, I believe this week is also going to be SP Authentic. So SP Authentic is going to be coming out, which is obviously another big product on the hockey calendar.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's going to have Matty Veneer's.
I believe so, yeah, because I think this is 22-23, not 23-24. So I believe, yes, it will be last year's rookie class.
Future watch.
Bobbles, this is all I'm saying to you right here. Do you see this? See what I'm showing you right now? Just saying. But if y'all want to know a little bit more about that, we will talk about that some more in the AMG Collectibles podcast, which I will be recording tomorrow morning. World Series Game 3 is happening, but we won't be discussing too much of that tonight. But I may be watching it out of the corner of my eye, allegedly. Before we get into all that, first let's talk about what's on our minds here. I'll quickly touch on the really brief. The Packers still suck. They are well tracking to get to 5 wins, probably less. They are closer to the sweepstakes to get into the higher draft picks. I don't know if they can get enough first overall, though. There's too many teams that are at 1 or 2 wins. I think there's still a 1-win team and a bunch of teams that hovering right around 2. So that's it. They suck, and I'm enjoying the schadenfreude of the Packer fans turning on each other, which is really enjoyable. They're trying to decide who to blame, either Jordan Love or the coaching or the general manager or all three or the fates. I'm kind of enjoying that part of it.
Well, tomorrow is, I believe, is the trade deadline for the NFL, and I assume that anybody with a pulse will be getting traded from the Patriots. So the dive to the bottom starts tomorrow.
I think they should reactivate Tom Brady and trade him.
I think they could get a lot for him.
Yeah, I think they should just go for it. Is that like he's not even in shape? He's not even playing football, but you should just see if you could trade him for a couple of footballs or something. Deflated or inflated.
Yeah, it could be either one. He is under the Patriots contract. The last contract he signed was a 1-day contract with the Pats. So they hold his rights, I assume, and maybe they can sell those.
Eric, no asset is too precious. Even retired assets should be on the table for a potential deal.
Get anything you can, because it's a bad situation here. It reminds me of my youth with those 1-in-15 Patriot teams. that everyone has forgotten about because of all the success in the last 20 years. But growing up, man, there was some lean times in Foxborough.
Mm-hmm. So let's open the floor to the only relevant football team of the discussion. Bobbles, go for it.
Well, I was like looking at your division because the NFC North is a very historic division. Lots of rivalry there.
Rivalries is a strong word. I've enjoyed the fact it really isn't much of a rivalry up until now, basically.
But is it weird? Like
Mhm.
as a Packer fan,
Uh-huh.
and I'm sure the Bears fans could fall into this, and maybe even the Minnesota fans. Is it weird that the king, by far, of the division is the lowly Detroit Lions? Like,
They might have the
does this
division
bode
locked
well?
they might have the division locked up by your Thanksgiving. Like it's a real possibility. All those
The
teams are real
Thanksgiving
bad.
Day game,
Mhm.
which is tradition, and they'll actually look good on Thanksgiving this year. I mean, who who had this on their 2023 NFL bingo card that the Detroit Lions would be just kicking ass in the NFC North?
Well, in fairness, I will say one thing. I think that there was a lot of optimism for pundits talking about the Lions only because, well, the Bears weren't going to be any good, and the Packers were going to regress no matter what. Even if you want to be optimistic, they were going to regress. So they were not a non-playoff team last year. So by default, that was going to put them underneath. The Minnesota was probably the only team that people thought might actually be legitimately able to give a spot. But even in the Packer game, Kirk Cousins went down.
Yep.
So they were still able to hang on and beat the Packers, but they tried to give away that game. They were at the point that towards the tail end where they almost tried to give it away. The Packers are terrible, but Minnesota now is in dire straits. They might take retired Tom Brady, just anything. So you might be able to get something from it. So right now that division is in dire straits outside of Detroit, basically.
The league is well, actually, kind of sucks. The AFC North has always been a tough division, and it's actually the only division. Yeah, it's the only division in the NFL where every team in the division has a winning record.
But
And
Bubbles, I will
so,
say, does this not play into the discussion that we had, I think, last week, where I said, do not be shocked if we are slowly
oh,
winding into a rock, paper, scissors kind of year? Because what happened? Kansas City got upset. That was not on the bingo card. We didn't have that one. That was a bit of a surprise how that played out. Right now, there are good teams, and there are teams who are good in certain matchups where they do very well, but nobody is like the dominant team. And every team, if the right things fall their way right now, that's always been the case. But there's usually a couple of teams that are really truly bottom feeding teams, and there are some bad ones. But even the Panthers won a game. Like everybody is at least finding one matchup that works for them, at least one.
well, you told me to talk about my team because they're the only ones
Now,
winning. And
now's your chance.
if
Go
you've
for it.
noticed, I've deflected that because I don't want to get into this Boston type situation where we're
This is
talking
your
about how
situation. What you could have
great.
done is you could have just gone go Ravens. Let's next topic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want the collapse, and it is the regular season,
A Hindenburg
right,
like
Eric?
situation.
Yeah, that's what I've heard it being referred to as.
It's not great. Yeah, not great.
No, it's
Fair
not
enough.
great. Not great.
Mm.
No.
Mm.
No.
All right, let's move on here then for a minute. One other thing. So, question for you guys: is there anything else that's kind of on your mind? Anything that's gone on since we last spoke that you want to quickly touch on?
Uh, hopefully Eric doesn't get time stamped. I heard that's a new thing.
Mm.
And then according to some sources, there was a very good video put out today about grading being a scam, and I'm not gonna get too deep into that topic, but yeah,
I would
that
talk
that
about that topic all day, every day, because grading is a scam in every
I think
way.
I
So
think it's
I'll go
interesting to see. It's interesting to see what people say, and I know that was thrown out there for the viewership portion of it by Neo. And if you haven't watched the
Mhm.
video, go watch it. But I went in there and responded to a few comments on it because it's funny things being said. Um, obviously, Carlos can can verify. We knew days ahead of time that this was going to be a thing, and
Oh, yeah.
Neo was going to do the video.
Mhm.
And I called that the tag army was going to come in full force, commenting on it. Sure enough, that's happened. You could predict the future there. But seriously, overall, it, the 6 to a 10 thing or whatever, it didn't surprise me. There's people in there saying, well, what I thought they QA screen these. Every single order I get back, there's usually something on a label that is wrong. Okay. These companies are doing, PSA is $1 million+ a month company. Mistakes are happening. Like, it's human nature. AI nature would have mistakes as well because humans are involved. They're not packaging and all that stuff. They're not encapsulating the cards. So things are going to happen. I wouldn't say it's a scam. I mean, hell. But anyway, it's always a fun topic. So I'm going to leave it at that.
I don't think it's fun at all, but I can get really emotional about it. But we do 5% better here, so I'm not going to my Friday flip out mode. But I could go on forever about what's wrong with the grading industry, and it's our own damn fault because we're the ones that keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, sending millions of cards in a month to PSA, putting the priority on it, charging more people for them. It's utterly ridiculous. Now, listen, I say this while I sitting here just at my desk. I can see 1, 2, 3 graded cards, encapsulated.
I was getting worried he wasn't sure what came after 2. That's what I was worried about.
No, listen. First of all, I can go to 10 without a problem unless I'm wearing mittens. If I have to go past 10, I take my shoes off and I'm good to 20.
So I'm saying, depending on how the weather goes at Expo, this may become increasingly complicated once we ask you to go past like 3 or 4.
Mittens. Yeah. If I have to wear mittens, things get ugly fast. But so listen, I have plenty of graded cards, but the way I do it, and no one has to agree with it, is,
and we won't.
That's fine. I purchase them at shows for a price that I think is fair, for a condition that I think is fair, and whether after inspecting them myself, determine that yes, this card roughly matches the number it's been given, and I'm satisfied with the number, the card, and the price. Don't even get me started on the whole PSA tax thing. Beckett, I mean, come on, I could literally have a heart attack going into my complete disrespect for that company.
So do you feel it will be awkward when you come back from the Expo and your entire collection has been graded in MNT?
Well, I was going to go KSA, but I'll go.
Oh no, I think we can elevate you. MNT, yeah. I think the holder is just that one little extra. It's got a little bit of a Beckett-ness going for it, and it kind of fits your brand.
And it's got this.
They're like cousins.
Yeah, like it's pretty close.
On it that matches nothing.
It's got a Beckett style slab.
It's garbage. But
pretty much.
Anyways, that wasn't the topic we were planning on discussing, but we could definitely do an hour and a half on it.
I promise in a future episode we will do the grading episode, but it won't be tonight.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on it because it's a fresh topic and just throw it out there. That's why I left it in a short burst. But stay tuned for a future episode.
Oh, 100%. We will 100% touch on that topic because there's plenty of stuff we could talk about without too much difficulty, and we no sense in spoiling that one when we've already got a topic that we can touch on. So Eric, is there anything else that's on your mind then before we get into talking about card shows and preparing for card shows and other things related to that?
No, I think that was a good little extra, on our thoughts of certain things and a good tease for the future.
All right, sounds good.
Everything else to add.
So let's touch on the card show thing because there's enough room for us to go in a couple of directions because we're going to talk about preparing for a card show, but then also at the tail end, we'll talk about kind of our thoughts on where card shows and things sit because everybody's friend, your friend, my friend, everyone's friend, Geoff, tried to do a little bit of a self-serving video where he talked about, investors panicking and things like that. That's basically the gist of it. It was kind of a nothing video, to be honest, but it's going to have reaction videos to it. But what I want to do is I want to take the direction of the discussion in the point of what we're observing at shows, because Bobbles was over at the Chantilly show and had some observations on it. But also we're going to have like I said, the Dallas show is going to be indicative for us of one type of thing that's happening. The expo is going to be its own beast. We'll give some of the factors that make it a little bit different as well. That's what we were chatting a little bit before we started recording, that there are a few factors that play differently. Obviously, different market, different country, different sports composition, but also at the same time, we're going to have manufacturer presence there. That's another factor that isn't at every show. That's a piece. We've got new fresh products that are coming out right at the time the show is going, and very popular products. Series 1 is an extremely popular product on the hockey calendar. It's a big deal. And then we're going to have, like I said, SP Authentic. Even though it's last year's SP Authentic, nonetheless, SP Authentic and Future Watch autographs, they're very important to a lot of the collectors, and people chase them. The Young Guns are a chase, but the Future Watch autos are also a chase for a lot of these young rookies. So right there, you've got a nice pair of very traditional products that the hockey folks like that are going to be leading into the show, which I think will help some of the dealers who have some wax to move. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. I'll touch on a few things just to start with. So this will be kind of like, content creator problems, or kind of more focused on that first. And then we'll talk about the actual general preparation. Sure. When we're talking about a show like this, it's not a show where it's like, oh, there's a show on the weekend. Yeah, I'll just pop in for an hour. If it's a show that you're going out of your way to travel to, so Eric can speak to that here in a minute. But if you're going on your way to travel, it obviously, hotel, accommodation, you got to factor that in. You might be planning some dinners. That's going to be something that's going to be, so the social aspect of that, it's going to be another piece. We can touch on that here in a minute. But if you're doing kind of content, which is a thing that I do, obviously you got to carry your camera. So already, in order to prepare myself, I have a lot of the stuff already. But one thing I didn't have was a dedicated camera bag. So I went and ordered one of those. Wanted to have that. Another thing is, traditionally we'll try to do a podcast kind of thing. We may or may not do that this time around for the next cycle. However, it doesn't change the fact that I want to have like a portable microphone. The one that I use to record this is usually the one that I use. Unfortunately, it's already connected to this arm here that would be a pain to remove. So I wanted to make sure I have one that I can throw into the bag and be able to have that, so that if I end up recording a live, great. Or if not, I can actually connect it to the laptop and be able to record some. This is something that the regular showgoer doesn't even have to worry about. Don't even worry about it if that's the case for you. But it's something that I have to think about. Extra memory cards and things related to that, so that I have it, because I'll try to put some stuff up on the YouTube channel. But just in general terms, it's just making sure that you got, again, your hotel and accommodations prepared, because you got to have that ready to go ahead of time. Generally speaking, well in advance. If you're like the National, it's almost like a year in advance now in order to really be prepared. So that's a little bit of a different factor. So Bobbles, just to start off, let me start off with you. So if we're talking something like the National, we'll get more into the Expo here in a minute, because Eric and I can speak to that a little more. But for the National, where you have to plan it out in advance, are there any considerations that you have to have normally for the last couple of Nationals you've been to?
Well, obviously we had everything set up for this past year's, and then I made the decision last minute to change that because of family vacations instead that I wanted to go to. The way we prepare is also going to be different than a lot of folks, but maybe not so different, because I think it's becoming more of a trendy thing. But what we try to do, obviously I have the Facebook group, and we try to open up and help, several different people by blocking off either a section of hotel rooms or the Airbnb. So my wife normally hunts for that and tries to find the best deal, coordinate like how much it would be per person and that sort of thing. And then, open it up to folks if they want to partake in that. And then that way it helps everybody out with cost of, the room and board and everything. So that would be the biggest thing with it. Obviously, there's always the joke. Make sure you got comfortable shoes. You always got to have the shoes. Eric has probably been to 14 Foot Lockers and, found himself a nice pair of New Balance.
He's got the nicest pair of clogs you're ever going to see. It's going to be sensational.
Do you go Crocs? You go Crocs? Is that what it is?
No, I
Oh,
said clogs. I said clogs. Wooden clogs.
Oh, the wooden ones with the
Oh
yeah.
yeah,
but
yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah.
All
Well, I
jokes
think
aside, you want to be comfortable.
I
And
know.
obviously all the show, the show floors, most of them are concrete and all that. But that's a well-known joke and fact and everything. I think another important thing, is how are you getting there? Are you flying, driving, etc.? That's a big portion of it. Um, what is your approach for the show? Are you planning to sell? Are you planning to buy? You can set a budget and be like Eric and go way past it. So yeah, I mean, it all depends. Now Chantilly, that's completely different because it's 45 minutes from me. I can go up there, see what the vibe is, see if dealers are buying, whatever. Come home and pack for the next day, take stuff back up, the following day and try to sell if I want to or buy whatever. So that's a completely different vibe. But something for like the national, you're right. It does take well in advance planning. So
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm going to kind of stem the tide in between. So I'll let Eric touch on this a little bit before I get into my piece, because speaking of the expo, it's a similar concept, but for me, it's kind of in my backyard. So concept wise, I'm distance, probably not dissimilar to what Bobbles just described, but I make a weekend out of it. It's specifically something where I'm going to go out of my way. And this is maybe one important point that I'll touch on here. For a lot of these bigger shows, it might not be worth your while if you don't already have like the community aspect or the social aspect built into it. Just to attend a show may not be worthwhile. Maybe attending a day for a couple hours or something might make more sense if you're being strategic and honing in on certain specific things. If you've got the social aspect of it, then maybe the longer trip and turning it in more of a vacation kind of trip maybe makes sense. And Eric can touch on that as well, because then if you're doing that, then your considerations are also going to be what's happening outside of the show. If you're doing something on some of the days or part of the days with other people, so all these things are something you have to factor in. Where I'm at, I'm about 35-40 minutes away, but I will still rent a hotel room because I want to be in the area during that whole period, because then I'll head back when I head back. I could technically drive back and forth, but then I'm losing a certain amount of time with the commute back and forth. So I made a choice to do it that way. But if you're driving distance, to Bobbles' case, then yeah, you could totally drive back and forth. It also makes it easier to transport cards, because if you're just driving back and forth, then you don't have to pack light, so to speak. Because if you're flying into a place or doing something of that sort, it's a different kind of packing. But if you got room to load stuff up in a car, that's what some of the dealers are going to have to do. Even though they're coming from a ways, they're going to have to load up vans or trucks and take their stuff in. They can't really fly it in. That's not going to work out in check-in. They have to, cart it across in a truck to make sure they can get, especially the dealers who deal in wax and things of that sort. That ain't coming on a plane. That's going to have to be driven. And so probably somebody is going to be in a truck, probably days in advance of the show even opening, driving it across country or whatever the case may be to get the stuff from point A to point B. But for the individual, all these factors, when you're planning to be there for more than a day or two or more than a couple hours, are all play into it. So Eric, as someone who's commuting,
Yeah.
what's the perspective from you?
Well, the very first thing that I would think like an average person has to do is look at their finances. It is going to cost thousands to do this. Um, and it's this things that you don't even really think about. You know about the hotels, and you're right, because you book them in advance and you get the bill. You estimate, I got to eat, so you put some, some money, in the on paper saying that okay, it's gonna. What you don't think about is there are 50 going to and fro, 50 tolls I have to go through. It's 25 tolls up, 25 tolls back. You don't factor that in. You don't think about that. I have to stop several times for gas. You kind of forget about that. You're driving, but you don't realize you're going to have to put a lot of gas in your car. This is an 8 to 10 hour drive, depending on how traffic is and how many times you stop. It you on during the drive, during that 8 to 10 hours, you have to eat. So did you pack a cooler with like 20 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, or are you stopping at all the rest stops and dropping more money there?
Or tuna and mayo sandwiches. Go on.
That's disgusting. So there's all this other money. So unless you're wealthy, you can't just say, "Hey, I'm going to go to Toronto this weekend," and with a pocket full of cash, jump on an airplane, pay for that, and go do it. You have to stop planning that stuff out. And the first thing you got to do is plan your finances, and you have to start putting money away well in advance. Because it is going to cost thousands to do this. This is why I don't come up in April. It isn't about the money I'm spending on the floor, which is a bit. It's the money.
About how much approximately, if we could get down to brass tacks here?
$7 to $10.
I mean, look, just ignore it's just me, you, me, Bobbles, and ignore the people watching this on replay, potential family members who may catch wind of this. So could you lay down, Bobbles? Could we get the specifics on that?
Here's a better question. How many weeks of allowance does it take you? And this would help all of the listeners and viewers. How many weeks of allowance does it take you saved up in order to be able to make this possible? That I think that's a great question there.
Yes, yes. The answer is 52. Yes. I don't get a very large allowance, but these are the things you definitely have to factor in. And then if you really wanted to think about it, I just had the car that I'm driving. I just paid a couple of $100 from my mechanic that I've had, he's worked on the car for a very long time. I said, "Hey, listen, I just need you to go through it. I got to drive this thing up and back from Toronto. I need to make sure that there's nothing wrong with it." So I had to pay him a couple of $100 to make sure that the car is going to make it there and back.
Now, as entertaining as it would be to itemize the whole thing, just to streamline it, I'll touch on a few key categories.
My point is there's costs associated with a long distance trip, such as the ones I'm mentioning, that people don't even think of. They're thinking, I need to put money away to buy cards, sports memorabilia, etc. Before you even get there, you have already spent thousands.
Yeah. Now there's one specific category that I want to touch on. And this applies to the National. It applies to any of the other ones, Chantilly, or any other show you want to attend as well. So let's say taking care of that, you've got some money set aside for the cards, you got some money set aside for the travel. And let's say we've got the accommodation set up, hotel, Airbnb, whatever it ends up being, whatever you figure out for yourself. We've assumed those. We know those are part of the equation. All right. Moving beyond that. While you're there, you're still going to eat while you're there too. So the question becomes, how do you, and it has to play into your budget too. So the question is, all right, do you have a bite to eat there? Eric's personal favorite, the concessions in the inside of the convention center. Personal favorite of Eric's, like he swears by them. Cannot live without the convention hot dogs. Best thing that he can enjoy. Now, expo wise, the smart money and the pro tip is that where the convention center actually is. So knowing the area around whatever convention it is actually very valuable to you because you'll know what options you have around you. Well, where they are, number one, it's across the street from the airport. So there's, if you're flying in, it's actually closely located. There's a bunch of hotels and things nearby. But where the convention center specifically is, because of where it's situated, there is a plaza full of a couple of different restaurants. So you've got Tim Hortons, you've got, you've got a sub place, you've got a couple of different things that are there. Well, literally, if you walk across the parking lot, there are some options there that are at least half decent for you. It's still kind of fast food.
But
the fact of the matter, I believe there is as well. Yes,
which we don't have. I've never seen down here, so I always thought it was neat that there's an A&W root beer restaurant across from Timmy.
Oh, yeah.
We have those here.
I've never seen one. I've never seen one in the North.
They've been banned in Peabody. So regardless, though, you've got a couple of options. Again, they are fast food options, but it's across a parking lot. So the point is, by leaving the convention center, you actually, fast food or not, it's still cheaper than the convention food, and you're still getting, better food. Now, if you want to go drive off to a restaurant, well, there's a couple restaurants down the street. If you hop in your car for 5 minutes, you can hit a couple of actual restaurants, go get yourself a burger, fries, or some other stuff, and you can go there. But you got to be willing to leave the venue a little bit. So taking that extra step to physically leave the venue, even if it's just walking across the parking lot, immediately saves you money, and you're going to get better quality food that'll probably hold you over more than if you just take the lazy, oh, but it's right there. It's like, yeah, but it's going to cost you double, and you're going to be hungry, and you're going to need to eat again right away.
Yeah.
Well, another expense, and I don't know what the expo cost, but another expense before you get in the door is tickets,
Mhm.
entry fee tickets,
Yep.
which to the national, if you get the VIP package or whatever, is very pricey.
Mhm.
And if you are going with, such as myself, me and my spouse, you double that price. The
Yeah.
room, two people shares a room, one price, not big deal. The tickets, they're individually priced and very priced. I think we paid somewhere around 600 for the tickets because I made the mistake and purchased the super VIP package or whatever. I
Uh-huh.
learned the lesson there. It's not necessary, but I think the VIP even is still two something. I think is what it goes for. Some I might be wrong on that. I can't remember, but you double that, you're still looking at roughly $400 just to get in the doors.
Yeah.
I don't know what the expo is, but um, Chantilly, if you go all 3 days, is going to run you roughly 30, probably about $40 per person if you go all 3 days. So, that's still almost $100.
Yeah.
So,
So it's a good. Thank you for bringing that up because I actually wanted, and you also touched on one thing I was going to ask you, is that here'll be another tip in the same vein of it. It's not to say that the VIP packages are or aren't worth it. Your mileage may vary. You have to figure that out for yourself. But the important thing is this: it's super beneficial for you to scout it out ahead of time. Kind of in the same vein of the preparation thing that we talked about already. Look, if we want to boil it down to a single point, preparation is going to get you a long way with a lot of this stuff because you'll know the lay of the land. You'll know what's going on, especially if you haven't been to the show before. If you've been to the show a million times and you already know where everything is, well, then fine. Then, this is all redundant to you. You already know this. We'll give you the wear comfortable shoes advice and send you on your way. You're good to go. But if you're trying to plan it out ahead of time and you don't know the stuff cold yet, um, spending a little time on the website, especially for some of these bigger shows that have developed a system, is going to be super helpful to you. Like, so for example, of talking about what Bobbles was talking about there, the expo has three different VIP packages that range from 65 all the way through 179, depending on which one you go through. Now, the key though is twofold. Number one, so there's a bronze, a silver, and a gold, and what you get differs. So you got to look at what's available. But then also an important factor: the price at the door. When I said 179, that 179 for the gold VIP is 149 if you order it in advance. You save $30 just by ordering it online in advance. And nowadays, everything is on your phone. It's codes and all that. So all you need is the code and confirmation. You walk in, they hand you your lanyard and your stuff. So you save $30 by doing nothing else than buying in advance and not waiting until you get to the door to pay an extra $30 for nothing. It's the exact same package that you're getting, but you're paying extra. You just took an extra $30 out of your pocket for no reason. And even at
yep.
the cheapest version of that VIP package, not even talking about the daily passes or whatever, but the cheapest version of the VIP package is either $65 or $79 at the door. $14 for nothing. And if you already have it ready to go, then you can literally just walk over to the thing, go, hey guys, I already got it paid for. Boom. Can I have my bag of stuff? And then they give you whatever is included in it. Now, playing to Bobble's point, as time has gone on, I find a lot of these VIP packages have less stuff that I would be as interested in. But for the expo, you do get priority to access certain autograph signers. They do put a couple of free things in the swag bag, but it's gotten progressively worse as time has gone on, in my opinion. And also kind of a cheat code, in fairness. Obviously, I talk about, friend of the channel, everything AMG. If you happen to be associated with dealers or have friends who are dealers, they can probably get you a dealer badge, and that just saves you that piece of it entirely. But that's not going to be everybody. But if you do have that
Well,
capacity, it is an option sometimes.
to touch back, and just for anybody out there, if you're aspiring to do so or already doing it, but you haven't attended a show, maybe. Um, to start off, you mentioned the content side of it. If you are a content creator, there are opportunities for some of these shows to get media passes or media badges, which then will grant you the entry into the show. And then it'll also allow you entry into certain spaces that regular holders, pass holders aren't allowed.
Mhm.
To the point of the ticket packages, this, since we're discussing preparation, think
Mhm.
about what your intent is for the show. What do you want to get out of the show? And I'll tell you why I said I learned my lesson on the Super VIP. We bought it because I wanted to know that if I didn't want to say I couldn't do anything, I wanted to have access to everything. However, the autograph guests that they give you the free autographs for, nobody I had interest in. We actually
Mhm.
gave the autograph passes away. We didn't get any autographs from anybody. That was a waste of money. The little booklets and flyers and stuff that they threw in the VIP bags, we didn't know this, but they fill the bags up and then the rest of them they put out for general population so that they were not special at all. Um, the parking passes, I didn't need to pay for 2 parking passes. I needed 1. So I paid additional for a second parking pass. I did, however, hand that over and was able to help out Mike O with parking. So I was able to gift it to somebody that could use it. But I paid for an expense I didn't necessarily need to. And these are things that you should think about. So there's like a lot of little added things that sound good, but then once you get it, you're like, why did I pay for this? So just, decide what you want to do while you're at the show, and then look at all the different options and figure out what is the best value. So
Mhm. Now, let me touch on this because this is what so those are kind of the high level, preparation. Think about it well in advance. Take the time to go to the website and check out some of that information, knowing these little things ahead of time. And the information's there. The information is on the website. So a lot of times you'll be able to get it. Now, not all of them are the best at updating it. If that's the case, then shoot them an email or whatever. Ask a question to say, hey, do you have it? The sooner you can get your hands on the floor plan, the sooner you understand what some of these, it helps you find certain things a little quicker. That little extra bit of scouting goes a long way. But let's touch on something that is if you've been to enough of these shows, becomes kind of obvious, but at the same time, it still bears repeating. It's still worthwhile. And I think Bobbles can attest to this, and Eric can attest to this. And if you watch the Friday live stream, you can tell that the Burrell is a very big proponent of this. The only reason why, if you, for whatever reason, you don't have access to, don't have the connections, can't get a dealer badge or a media badge or any of these things, there is something the VIP does provide, which, depending on what it is you're trying to do, may still hold some value to you. And this is same for the National, same for the Expo. You do get to get on the floor sooner. So
yep,
there is, depending on what it is. So back to Bobbles' point, what you're trying to achieve, if your goal is as a collector is to try to get first dibs on certain specific niche things that aren't available in abundance, you want to get a young gun of a player, well, there'll be 500 of them on the floor. That will not be an issue. If it's
Well,
something commonly available, then don't bother, save the money, get a regular pass, and you'll be good to go. But if there's certain niche things that you think you might need to be at the dealer table first to get your hands on, for the Expo, it's like 30 minutes. For the National, I don't remember if it's 30 minutes or an hour or something, but there's some period of time that you get in advance.
it's either an hour or an hour and a half, if I remember
Sure.
correctly.
Regardless, it's still an edge versus the rank and file person with the general admission pass. So you do get a little bit of a window of time where there's physically less people in the room, a little easier to communicate, a little easier to find your stuff, a little easier to get to certain booths. And that little extra bit of time to be able to negotiate, figure out your thing, get your stuff, and get out can make a big difference. And let's be fair about this. And we've talked about this before in the live. A lot of dealers, part of the reason they are dealers is because, yes, they want to sell stuff, but part of it is honestly they want to buy stuff. And dealer to dealer transactions are happening before people have ever set foot in that price you got. That dealer bought it from somebody who bought it from somebody who bought it from somebody before you even got in the door.
You
So if you want the best deal, you want to be there before everybody else has already gotten in. So you get first dibs, real first dibs.
and even not just for like niche things. If you are a dollar box diver,
Sure.
you get first dibs at those value boxes. And let's be real, it takes a long time to dig through boxes, and it gives you a little bit of extra time. and you get a head start maybe on a box that somebody hasn't been through. And so that time is valuable there as well for, for the value-minded folks that are, hunting for cheaper items. It's very useful for that as well.
Yep.
I know.
And another in the same vein. So real quick, and then I'll go to Eric. But another thing as well. If you want to do Eric's favorite grading, you can get your stuff right in right away. Like if you want to go and do it, whether it is on-site grading, if you want to do that, or even if you just want to submit regularly and just get it out of the way and then move on to other things. If you're already in the door, you can literally walk over to the booth. If you need to fill out something, if you ideally you've already filled it out and you kind of just hand it off. But if you need to do some of those like housekeeping items and be like, or drop off stuff at ComC, that's a thing that I do at the expo. I'll get a little box of stuff together and drop it off at ComC. You can print off the little slip ahead of time. They'll take it from you, boom, scan the slip, put the box away, and it's done. And then you don't have to be there when everybody else is there. You've already taken care of your business. Dropped off the stuff you're going to get graded. Take care of your business. If it's on-site graded, even better. You're already at the front of the line. Your stuff will be ready before everybody else's, and you'll be able to get your stuff back right away. Fantastic. When it gets busy, a lot of that stuff becomes a lot tougher. It's the exact same process, but now there's more people around. There's a lot more craziness going on. You may not have time to ask a couple of questions if you want to ask them. Well, if you're already there and you can ask those questions and take care of that business, then you're done. And you can go on to scouting out the show, looking at value boxes or whatever else you want to do. That little extra time can be huge to get some stuff out of the way that you don't have to now deal with. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I think I may have said this in maybe on a Friday show, but these last couple of fall shows that I've been to, I've been lucky. Lucky is the word. I'm very, very lucky and fortunate that I knew people that could get me in while things are getting set up. So hours before the VIPs got there, hours before the show even started, people are still taking things off trucks and bringing it in on dollies. And in the last 2 years, being in there during setup, I have crossed many things off my to get list before the doors even opened. And it's I've been very, very fortunate. But I see dealers doing that to back up your point. It's not just guys like me who snuck in and are sneaking around trying to cherry pick. It's the dealers are working on each other and they're looking at each other's tables and they're making trades and throwing cash around. And this dealer is known for carrying this type of stuff and this dealer is known for carrying this type of stuff. Well, these guys get together and say, hey, I got some of your stuff, I got some of your stuff, and that stuff changes. So it's a very interesting time to be a fly on the wall before a major show starts. And I've been fortunate enough to be that fly, I guess.
Now, one other thing that kind of plays into this as well, and this is more of a general thing. Again, a lot of this stuff will be like high level, principled stuff, and we can always touch on it more and more depth later on. But a lot of it is common sense. But it's funny how often some people don't understand or don't follow it, and you'll see it. You'll go to the show and realize that some people don't get that this is a thing you can do. Well, we talked about trying to get in as early as you reasonably can. There are huge advantages to that, what we just talked about. But the other piece, and Eric alluded to it there, if you get the chance and you do attend some of these shows often enough, it becomes invaluable to build those networks because then you have more sets of eyes and more people walking around who can potentially see things and direct you and point you in the direction. And sometimes it helps you get deals done before you even walk in the door. One of the running jokes about the that we talk about on the Friday thing is how I'm notorious for not being there in the morning, and I'm not. But I've gotten deals done where they've been taken care of in the morning, or something where I'll get a message and I'll be like, "Yep, I'll come by later and grab that from you," and deals get handled. But that's only because you've been able to build up a network of folks that you know who are keeping an eye out and are able to say, "Hey, I found this over XYZ. Do you want me to grab it, or do you want to come by and get it, or whatever the case may be, depending on what time of the day it is." That one extra set of eyes can get a deal done that otherwise wouldn't get done because you're just not going to be, you haven't gotten to that part of the show yet. You're trying to do your cycle, and already that's a huge advantage. But taking care of, there's so many deals that sometimes get done before you even walk through the front door, and the deal's already been taken care of. And now it's just, all right, now it's just exchanging the cards or exchanging money or whatever the case may be.
Well, to add on to that, and just a use even for that hour, even if you're not buying anything, go around, talk to dealers, get to know them, let them get to know you. Believe it or not, these guys, like, they hit a lot of shows, but they remember customers that are there, and that have talked to them or whatever. And especially if you go to the show often, they're going to remember you, and they may know things that you like or that you look for. They're going to wind up giving you better deals. So even if you're in there early and you're not really buying anything, just go around and talk to people. Even communicating can make some really good, as you mentioned, deals. The National last year, the biggest card I bought was purchased on Tuesday, the day before the National even
Mhm.
started. I went to the show to get the VIP bags and all of that. And there was a dealer that I'm very familiar with that I bought a lot of stuff off of, both from Chantilly and off of Facebook. He had posted a card online. I seen it, told him I would take it. I bought that from him the day before the National even started. So, but I am interested. Eric said he's in there before, during setup and everything, and then he's made deals. But I thought Eric like had other people finding the cards for him. It wasn't that the story. Like,
Last year I did. I went up there with a list, which I always have, and I had a number, and they're numbered, not always out of priority, but you'd think the top three are definitely on priority. And I had a number one, and I got in there super early before the show, searched around, couldn't find it, and this went on and on and on and on. The show starts, I'm looking, can't find it, and I meet up with Paul C as he goes by on YouTube, and I go, yeah, I'm looking for this card. If you happen to see it over the next, you know, 4 days, let me know. Well, 15 minutes later, if that, he's like, I found it. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? He goes, no, it's right over here, and he brings me over to it. There it is. I'm like, that, it was that simple, and there it is. That's it. So it does help to have other spotters out, because they may just by accident find something
so
that.
so was there, because this is something, we were talking finances and you planned your finances and everything.
Mm.
Was there a finder's fee involved? Because, if you're going to utilize others and chip them a finder's fee, you got to add that into, and these are part of those expenses that aren't thought about.
Yeah.
You got to have your pool of finder's fee money as well, right?
Now,
No,
when you're
and
thinking your answer, be aware that Paul C will be at this show. He
yeah,
did let me know that he will be here at this one.
yeah, no, I'm cheap. No.
Mm.
Okay. I was just curious because people do pay finder's fees.
Um,
So,
Carl, I have found many cards for Carlos, never had a finder's fee.
Frankly, you got exactly what you deserve.
See,
Because I'm in a good mood, I may double your finder's fee for the show.
thank you very much. I look forward
I
to
do what
it.
I can. I do what I can. Yeah. So having people helps, Bubbles. Now, actually, you're also reminding me of something else that I want to touch. One thing though that I wanted to have a little bit of a conversation about, kind of preparing for the show. And as you're listening, I'm sure a lot of you are like, "Oh yeah, that's obvious." It's like, I get what you're saying, but I swear to you, I've been to shows where people don't get this. I swear to you, and a lot of them, like it's horrifying. So let's take a moment here and talk about something more general. We've talked about the obvious preparation. Hey, go to the website, do that additional research. Again, in the example of the expo, you can literally save money by going to the website and pushing the button. You push the button and buy the tickets. If you want to buy the tickets, you save money by doing it on the website. You totally do. If you get your hotel or whatever in advance, you'll save money versus waiting until the last minute. But again, this should be common sense stuff, but I'm just pointing it out. Getting the floor plan, knowing that ahead of time. If you're able to network, in every aspect of life, networking can help a lot. But in this scenario, in this very straightforward scenario, just that little bit of extra connection with some folks can help you find stuff. It can help you create some scenarios. So let's talk about this category. This is probably a good one. Let's talk about different techniques that people can use to either negotiate or work on getting a deal that makes sense for them when they're actually trying to find the item. So you find the item you're looking for, you kind of know what the pricing is. Hopefully you've done your homework so you kind of know what the pricing is, or you know how to look up a comp and figure that out. I'm not going to teach you how to do that right now. Let's assume that you've got that portion of it down. You know approximately what you should be paying and you're comfortable, but now you want to figure out how to get to that price point. So there's two scenarios. One is where the dealer is being really stubborn and you have to kind of work around that if you want it badly enough. If you're willing to walk away, then it doesn't matter. And if it's available enough, well, then go to somebody else's table and find it there. But assuming you want that one, assuming it's close enough that you think you can get a deal done, what are some things you can do to try to get the deal done? So I'll give an example if you guys want, and then I'd like to get any tips or thoughts that you guys might have. In previous shows where I found the dealers to be a little bit more stubborn and less flexible on pricing, that's where I like to use bundling a lot. That tends to be a technique that works well for me because even if you can't get them to move a lot on price on this, maybe there's something else that you can use or that you want that maybe in combination can get you to a combined price that is more reasonable. So maybe you get a deeper discount on something else, or you get a toss in there that you know you can do something with. And in turn, that makes the deal better for you, whether it's trade, whether it's, sometimes I've bought an extra card in there and then I go and sell that card. I know I can get more for it. And by doing that, I was able to offset the price of the first item and make it work for me. Sometimes it's been something as simple and as dumb as I'm at a booth where a guy has a lot of newer stuff in wax and whatever. He goes, all right, tell you what, you want that price? Can you toss in that blaster? I don't even need the blaster necessarily, but I go, well, if I'm going to pay the same price anyway, then I'd like to get a little more for my money. A $20 or $30 blaster, not a big deal. Well, fine, throw it in then. And it's at least a little better deal for me. And hey, and then at least I get to have some fun opening a blaster. I got a little more bang for my buck. So any thoughts on any kind of tricks or techniques that you guys use to try to make a deal? Let's say a dealer's being a little bit stubborn, but you'd still like the card. So walking away isn't necessarily your first choice. Things that you might do to try to make the deal work for you.
Go ahead and start, Eric, because I want to add something on the reverse end of that too.
I don't try to nickel and dime people. I realize that, these guys have money invested. This is a business. They paid for a table that, for a huge show like Toronto, they have put out thousands upon thousands of dollars to get here and do the same thing I did. So the first thing, of course, you either the price is either on the card or you ask how much you're looking for. And one, is it reasonable? The number they give you, is that reasonable? Are you really gonna walk away over $5? Are you really gonna try just for the fun of haggling? Are you going to try to get $5 more off? What I do at times is they'll say 50, and instead of going to some unreasonable number like 20, which some people will do. Well, how about 20? Well, they wouldn't have started at 50 if they're willing to take 20. You have to be more reasonable. You have to be like, well, I was thinking more around 40. Yeah, could I possibly get it for 35? Maybe. But I feel as if I'm willing to eat a little bit, they're willing to eat a little bit. If I go right down to some bottom number, they're instantly put off and quickly you're going to say no.
So I understand you. So real quick, Eric, I just want to clarify what you just said. So are you suggesting that it may not be a viable, 4D chess strategy to throw in a number that you pretty much know they're going to reject as your opening salvo as a tactic?
Right. Yeah, I don't understand how people do that, throw out these stupid numbers. We have people come in all the time to the shop and throw out ridiculous numbers at us, and it's just like, no, why are you even wasting that time? It's if you're going to make a counter offer, make a real one that the person is going to be happy with. They have to make money. If you don't give them some of yours, they don't come back and sell cards next time. The idea that these dealers shouldn't be allowed to make $1 or $2, is silly, because if they're not dealing, you don't get cards. So you have to be fair in your offers, your counter offers. I mean, be reasonable. They'll listen. And a lot of times, if it's reasonable, they'll get absolutely. I said 50, you said 40. The guy that was here a few minutes ago offered 25, which was a joke. Here, have a great day. Now they have money and they made, $10 on the card. And they wanted to make 20, they only made 10, but it's still good for them.
Mhm. Now, Bubbles, do you want to add anything? I have a thought, but before I do, did you want to add anything to this piece?
So, from what I've seen, the past few shows, I really, and I'm speaking on Chantilly specifically, but over the past couple of years, it's actually been hard. And I get what Eric's saying with don't throw a low ball offer, but at the same time, the dealers, and maybe it's different at the expo, you do have a different sort of audience and
Mhm.
sport and all that there. So maybe it is a bit different there. But I'm going to use Chantilly as an example. There are times that although it seems like a dumb offer based on what is sticker priced, it's actually not dumb at all. Their price on the sticker is dumb. And that does come into play. My strategy usually, and what I'm mostly looking for when I go to shows, is like Ken Griffey Jr. inserts, that sort of thing. A lot of times those I have to dig for them, hence those value boxes. And if I find a dealer that's got a good bit of them, I'll pull out like any of them I'm interested in, and I'll make a stack and do kind of the bundle thing that Carlos is talking about. But what I'll do is I'll just make a stack and I'll give it to the dealer and be, just ask simply, what can you do on all of these? Because normally, theoretically, a bundle, they're going to come off the sticker. They'll throw a number out. What I'll then do is I'll start with the highest dollar cards and see where were they at sticker price to what I could obtain them at if I just went on eBay and bought them. If
Mhm.
they're close, then our number is probably, his number he's thrown at me is probably pretty good. If they're way off, then I have to question things and kind of see, do I really want them for this? Or, we're talking finances here and you're spending a lot to go to this show. Do I want to spend even more overpaying versus what I could just buy online? So that's where things do get frustrating. And it really has been within the past 2 years that this has been an issue. Um, but what I wanted to add on to this isn't just the negotiation tactic and preparation for purchasing cards. I love going to shows to sell. I don't need a table. I have found that walking the show floor, finding the dealers that are interested in things that at that time I'm willing to let go of, or I'm looking to move, finding the dealers I would be interested in them. But one thing to make these deals better is know what your card's value is before going to the show. Know what you're willing to take for the card. Don't expect to go to the show, have a card that sells for $100 on eBay, and expect the dealer to give you a $100 bill. It's not going to happen. Know what you're willing to accept. Go in, find the dealers that would, don't go to a vintage dealer asking if he wants to buy a 2023 Prism card, and vice versa. Don't go to a guy with a bunch of shiny asking if he wants to buy vintage. But know what your cards are selling for and what you'll take on them. Maybe do the bundle thing, as Carlos mentioned.
Mhm.
If that guy has something, maybe try to work it in with a trade. Get a little bit off of something you're wanting. So I highly recommend that. It helps the process. You got a number in mind. You're not him hauling around on your phone. What does it sell for? Know what you want. Know what's fair, and negotiate that way.
Now, I'll add a couple of pieces to that because I think Bobbles gave some good points. One of the key pieces, and he touched on it there, is I like to use kind of similar to what he's talking about. I like to use the price tags. So, first of all, dealers use price tags. For the love of all that is holy, put on price tags. I don't care if the price tags are wrong. At least have something on there so that I have a starting point. Unless you have an inventory control number, then things get a little dicey. Anyway,
We're
anyway,
5% more mature on Mondays.
that's why I didn't go any further with it, Eric. So anyway, the point is that please have a price tag on there because then it gives me a starting point. It gives me an anchor to try to figure out where to go next. Because again, assuming I've done my homework, hopefully, then I at least have an idea of where things go. Or I can quickly, fast, go in and boom and take a little bit of a look. Look, uh, Bobbles alluded to this. The dumbest thing in the world is if a dealer has a card on the table and they're insistent upon a certain price, and you can literally go on eBay and find a buy it now cheaper. And that happens all the
Way
time.
cheaper sometimes.
And
Way
that's the dumbest
cheaper.
thing in the world, because if that's the case, then what am I even discussing this with you for? Because I could literally just hit the button and we're done with this. Go ahead.
In my problem is I collect hockey.
One of your problems. Yes, go on.
I collect hockey, mostly vintage hockey. We've covered this a million times on Fridays. I get on eBay, I see the card I want, I see the price I want. I'm like, oh my God, I can't hit buy it now fast enough. I see it's from Canada and they want $18 shipping. So I have to factor that in when I am in Canada, that I can get this in my hand and not pay an extra $18. And so if I have to take 5 or 10 out of that 18 and give it to the guy, I'm still saving money.
Yeah. I think our problem though, Eric, is when the difference isn't 18, when the difference in the price you're looking at in front of you is 100.
Right.
Then pay the damn $18 and move on with your life. So the bottom line though is when I'm maybe this would be a good way to anchor this. Whenever I'm talking about the price, I include the shipping in the price. In my mind, when I'm looking at it, whatever I have to pay to get the thing in my hands is part of the price. Like regardless of what everything. I have to
Tax,
factor
everything,
all
yep.
of this in. Even if I use the ship my cards, which has been extremely helpful for me. Well, I get a $3 surcharge when I put it in there, but when I compare the shipping price for eBay international shipping, whatever, comparatively, if I pay $4 or $5 shipping plus $3, that's $7 US. That's still way cheaper than the 17 or 18 or 19 US plus customs that they will charge me when it crosses the border. So that I would get hit with anyway. So when I do the math quickly, I go, yeah, okay, the $3 surcharge plus $4 shipping, I'm still way ahead. We're still doing a lot better over here. The big point though is that assuming we've done our research, assuming we've been able to quickly figure it out, two things that are a big turnoff for me are a dealer who doesn't have prices on there and I have to waste my time asking you. But assuming I go through this much trouble, then the answer you give me is going to be my anchor point. Because if the item is $100 all day long and you're asking for $180, this might not be worth even trying to do bundles or all kinds, because we're so far off. Like if you're already all the way past that far off, then I can probably save time just by moving on. But another piece that I find, and I get this from a lot of show vlogs, the weirdest negotiation style I've ever seen. One thing that I would recommend to everybody, dealers and collectors alike, don't negotiate against yourself against silence. If the other person's thinking you're not saying anything, you don't need to be like $100. And then Bobble stares at you, with his look of truth. And then you're like, all right, $120. And he hasn't said a damn thing. He isn't nodding. He's just sitting there going like, wait a minute, this idiot's going to keep raising. Then he's just going to sit there and stay quiet if you're just going to keep raising the price without him saying a damn thing. Let him say something. Whatever it is, yes or no, or let me think about it, or let the man speak. And depending on the responses, then you can kind of play off that a little. But I literally will watch people negotiate against themselves. I've watched it, but I've watched it on both sides of the table. I've watched it from the perspective of hanging out at the booth with my buddy who's a dealer, watching somebody negotiate against themselves. I've also been on the other side of it where I'm the one who stands there quietly looking at you and you keep lowering the price. Well, in that case, I'm just going to sit here quietly for a while. No problem. If you keep going, you're doing great.
It happens more often than you think too. And I'll tell you something else. I use this a lot, obviously, when I'm out, like, going to yard sales or whatever, but I think it could potentially be used in cards too, because they go kind of hand in hand. But if somebody says, "What are you looking to pay?" or "What will you give me?" or whatever, I don't like throwing that first number out
Mhm.
because you could actually negotiate there against yourself. Maybe they're thinking lower.
Mhm.
So I like to say, "I don't know, it's yours. I'm cheap. You tell me a number." Because then they know you're looking at a cheap number, so to speak, and it depends on what cheap is on the item, but they then know where you're looking at, and they can then decide what they want to throw the number out. And then, like Carlos said, that then gives you a base starting point.
Mhm.
If they've already heard you say I'm cheap and they're still throwing some dumb number out, then you might as well just walk away, you know?
Yeah.
But then if they come out with a realistic number, you can then make the choice, okay, that's a solid deal. I want it. Or you can take it from there and try to negotiate a little bit more. So
Mhm. For
that's
sure.
something, if they say, what do you want to give? Try that tactic. I'm cheap.
Yeah.
Tell me, it's yours. Tell me what you want.
I think yours is smarter than what I'm about to say, but the one that I use at the shop is I can't buy it and sell it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the concept's the same though. I think it were. I think I just what's interesting, and this is what's funny about it. The reason why I broach it the way that I just gave the examples that I gave, I go, and it would be very funny if people in my day to day life observed the way I conduct myself when I'm doing a negotiation at a card shop or a card show or whatever the case may be. Obviously, I know this is shocking, but given that we do this podcast, and given that we do a live stream of modest length, um, I don't mind talking. I know it's shocking. I'm glad you're all sitting down. I'm glad. Uh, but when I'm at a card show, if you watch, I don't say a hell of a lot. It's like I'm getting charged by the word. And the reason for that is because I know that if I let you do most of the talking, sometimes you'll talk yourself into the side of the deal that's going to work for me. In that situation, I'm better served to be a mute. The less I say, the more it allows you to every word you say is giving me information. Like I'm learning
Hmm.
things about as you're speaking. I am learning where your head's at. I am learning, do you need to desperately move this? In which case, well, I'm going to adjust my price. It's like playing a game. I like to use poker analogies for a lot of things, but it is playing a game of poker. Every move, every tell you're giving me is giving me a little piece of information that I can use to figure out where we're going to sit at. I'm not going out there to try to rip you off. But at the same time, logically, as a buyer, I want the best possible price. I want as low a price as humanly possible. If I can get it basically for free, then I'm going to try. But I'm not going to go out of my way to try. I'm not going to play dirty tricks. But if you're going to talk your way into it all by yourself, and all I have to do is just sit here quietly and stare at you, then prepare to be stared at for a little while until we get to the result that works. A lot of the more experienced dealers, this will not work on them because they understand that. So they understand. So it'll be a Mexican standoff. You'll just stare at each other until somebody blinks,
Well,
which is fine.
a lot of your experienced dealers are also not going to hem haul and
Yeah.
not have their stuff. They know what they want for the
Mhm.
card, what their bottom is. It's like what I said, preparing to go into the show to sell. They've already got their stuff. They know what it's worth. They know what they want to sell it at. They know what they can go down to, and they're either going to move it or they're not. As you said, when people are talking too much or giving a story,
Mhm.
sometimes you can find out what they paid, do they have an attachment, where the card came from, why they bought it.
Mhm.
They'll give you like the last 4 years of statistics of the player, all of this information, and you can just kind of get that feel. Are they really looking to move it, or are they emotionally attached? Are they wanting too much? Are they unrealistic? Are they over their head underwater on this thing? And then you kind of know how to game plan from there. So you're 100% right on that. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah. I'm just speaking from card show vlogs. Like I'll watch, and I'll listen to them, and I'm just sitting there like, you didn't have to tell them that. You didn't have to tell them that either. Like the other person on the other end didn't need to know what you all the last 10 things you just said did not in any way help your situation in terms of this negotiation that you're conducting. Nothing you've said helped your specific cause. And I don't understand why you would volunteer that unless someone is forcing you to. Like, why would you reveal that and give that much information? The other piece of the other piece, and my favorite, is where somebody's tactic will be to talk down the card that they're trying to buy. And I'm just sitting there like, so your plan is to tell me everything that's wrong with the card. And I'm just sitting there kind of being amused by it. I'm sitting there like, so your plan is to tell me everything that's wrong with the card. And they'd be like, oh, I'll take it off your hands. Well, it sounds to me like you don't want the card. I'm like, if it's so bad, then why do you want it? Your words are contradicting the action that you're trying to undertake. The two things don't match up. You're not fooling me. Is basically what I'm saying.
So many times, and not just at work, but since 1988, when I've been got into this silly little hobby, that people try to convince each other that this thing that they're haggling over is complete garbage, and it doesn't.
Which is why grading exists, a third party opinion.
And that was definitely one of the reasons. Authenticity was a huge one, and definitely like, okay, well, I think I'm trying to buy it, and I'm telling you it's fair, and you're trying to sell it, and you're trying to tell me it's mint. Well, yeah, PSA comes along and goes, guys, it's very good. Let's meet in the middle, and this is what you should pay for it. I understand the principle of that. I support the idea of it. That's not what has happened, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, people come in all the time. They want to purchase something, and we go, here you go, and I see a scratch, and they're doing this with the light, and I see a scratch right here, and this corner here is kind of dinged, and I just, do you still want it?
But what's funny too, and you mentioned the card show vlogs, and I'm not gonna name drop because there's probably multiples out there because it became a little trendy thing to do. But there's also the opposite end of it where they want to talk the card up. And the one trend that I caught on to that was happening that I just hysterically laughed at was the people saying the encapsulated cards, like the Panini sealed or the top sealed and the one touches had a premium because they hadn't been out of the one touch. And I'm sitting here like, I literally did a video showing a card that was crammed in the one touch by Panini. Being in that one touch means jack shit. Like, it does not matter. It just means that seal hasn't been broken yet because that card inside likely is in no better shape than any of the ones that were in the pack outside of the one touch. So that was a trend where they were kind of using that as putting a premium value on it because it was still sealed in the one touch.
Yeah. Well, I think though the key takeaway, and I want to make sure we're mindful of time here. We're doing all right, but I just want to make sure we're mindful of it. But one of the key pieces of this segment specifically, I wanted to focus on. I won't even call them tips necessarily. It's just I want to call it food for thought here. It's just a matter of just some things to think about. The reason I like the card show vlogs is because I treat them as entertainment. I treat them as nothing more than entertainment. But I do get concerned watching as an observer. Again, some of my buddies operate as dealers at these shows. So I get a chance to just sit at the table. I don't have any stake in this. None of these cards are mine. So whether they sell them or don't sell them is not my concern. But I get a chance to kind of sit back and enjoy and listen to the exchanges, live as people try to work through a lot of these things. And the prevailing thing that I'll see with some of the younger folks, unfortunately, is that they're taking these card show vlogs and trying to use them and trying to emulate them. That's the reason why I'm talking against some of these quote unquote strategies. And I'm being like, that's why I said the piece about the, don't overplay your hand. I'm not telling you not to talk. I'm not telling you not to be a mute from the beginning to the end of the conversation. I'm saying you can say hello. You can have a quick conversation as you lead into asking about some of the cards or whatever you want to do. It's not a bad thing to be a human being and have a basic conversation. But if it's just you throwing word vomit at somebody, hoping that somehow you'll dizzy them into making this incredible deal for you, I don't think that works most of the time. Especially if the dealer knows what they're doing, Or vice versa. The dealer just tries to talk your ear off, trying to distract you from the fact that the price is wrong. If the
Mhm.
price is wrong, the price is wrong. And it's just weird that it's become normalized to just keep going. Like I said, the back and forth. And again, this could very well be staged for our collective entertainment, but people are watching this and trying to emulate it. I've seen people try to emulate it. So I sit there and go like, that's not what a normal negotiation looks like. And again, maybe I'm operating a little differently because a lot of the dealers that I deal with, I've dealt with before. So we kind of know each other's idiosyncrasies a little bit. I joke with Eric where I said, what I would advise someone to do is not what I do with my buddy Steve. He and I have a very different negotiating style, which is to say, I make fun of his ridiculous sticker prices. I mock them without mercy, and I offer him $1.50. It doesn't matter what the card is. I offer him basically nothing. And then eventually we wind up at a realistic price because, again, his number is high. He knows that people are going to negotiate it down, but he's got good stuff like quality. He's got quality material. So he can try to get a premium. And if you know that, you can work them down to a price that you're happy with if you understand that that's going to be. But if somebody on the outside is looking at it, it's like, why are the hell are these two like abusing and lobbing insults back at each other? And then in the end, we laugh, we shake hands, and we complete the deal. But I've known him for 20 years. So I can ridicule his prices mercilessly, and eventually we will find a price that works out.
And
And
his
he's
shirts.
given me some good deals.
And
What's
his
that?
shirts. And his
Of
shirts.
course, and his shirts. Absolutely. The shirts are hideous. But the point is, I'll make fun of his fashion sense and his pricing. But
Yeah.
if you don't know these people, then maybe don't lead with that. Like, I would advise against it.
Right.
Perhaps not.
Do you talk his sticker price up though if it's something Eric wants? That's the important question.
Whatever it is, we add a zero.
Okay.
Mm.
All right. I just
And
wanted to be
he
sure because
and Eric
there's a
can only
tax
pay.
involved.
Yeah, Eric can only pay in US dollars.
Yes, that's been really tough. I really thought I was gonna get a break with the Canadian funds, but somehow they don't let me pay in them. I have to pay in American money. It's crazy.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like when Eric comes by, it's $1,000 American for $1 Canadian. So the exchange really hasn't
Exchange
worked out
rate.
for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really hasn't worked out for him.
I'm
It's been very
not,
strange.
I don't math good,
Mm.
so I just do what Carlos says because I don't understand it all how it works. So
He doesn't understand a lot of things. Look, we'll talk about this more on the Friday. There's a lot of misunderstandings, is all I'm getting at. A lot of misunderstandings. But the bottom line, though, is that
some of them are real, though.
several of them are. That's what makes it better. But bottom line here, bottom line is that there is you don't have to try to get, and maybe this will be the best way that I can present this, Bobbles and Eric. We don't need to all try to be like master negotiators. Sometimes a really simple, basic negotiation style is best. With most people, it's as straightforward as this is the price you're looking to get. It is a start for negotiations. And basically, your goal, and this would be the way I would present it, your goal is to try to figure out how much room, if any, there is. And you're going to try to get as much of that room in your favor as possible. That's all you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out whatever that number is that is closer to the number that you're shooting for, your ideal. And hopefully you find a compromise in the middle that both people can live with. And that's a good negotiation.
One other thing, and this reminded me when you talked about that guy and how you've known him for so long. Don't be afraid to use this in negotiation either. It's not to I can't think of the word I want to use, but anyway, it's not to be insulting. If you go to a particular show frequently, obviously I go to Chantilly every time it's here, and you're going to see the same dealers at these shows quite often. Many times you're going to see the same cards quite often at these same dealers. If there is a card that a particular dealer has and you have seen it there show after show after show, don't be afraid to go each time if you seriously want that card and just say, hey, are you ready to do any better? If the sticker price or the price they're asking isn't what you're interested in paying, it may take you a while, but the chances are you will eventually wind up with that card because they're going to see that you are seriously interested in it. You remind them that they haven't moved it, that it's still here, it's so many shows later. And they likely will then be willing to kind of work with you on price. I've done it. My Muhammad Ali auto, I asked the guy 5 shows in a row about the card. Finally, I got it at the price I wanted it at. and we both were happy with it. So don't be afraid to do that either. So
I can actually think of a gentleman right now at a specific show that has three 1950 four Bruins cards that have been sitting in there, and we talk about it every month.
yep.
And I still think he wants too much. And I think, and I was thinking, I said, all right, if he still has those things next time, I'm gonna just say, dude, we've had this conversation 5 times.
Yep. Just remind them, hey, I've been interested. I check with you each time. They're still here, obviously. They're not selling.
For the last 4 shows, it's a monthly show. So for 4 months, these 3 cards are lined up in the same spot in his case. Top right, 1, 2, 3. Next month will be the 5th month. That's almost a half a year. It's like, maybe you should just take the $75 I'm offering.
There you go. But I agree. I think Bobbles makes the correct point that if you do have, that's why I say, like, if you have had the chance to build up that track record, you do. If you do have a reputation for having completed deals. Now, if you're a tire kicker, now the opposite side of the coin. If you're a tire kicker who everybody knows is the guy who will always offer garbage prices, like you're not even serious. You're offering like a fraction of what the card goes for. And it doesn't matter what the card is, like you're always offering next to nothing. Everyone will just ignore you. It doesn't matter how many times you come by because the card is gone. It has sold. And because you're the one who's offering nothing. So it works both ways from the dealer perspective, from the seller perspective. But if you are a person who people have been able to do deals with in the past, then the likelihood that you'll be able to come to a deal in the future improves because then at least they know you're somebody that can be dealt with. You can come to some kind of a compromise. It's almost always a compromise. It's rare. The only times I've ever really ended up with a price that is like so ridiculous is when the person flat out mispriced it. And if that's the case, then there's really no negotiation. I kind of like, I accept your terms. Good day. Good day, sir. And you leave. That's the time. Don't get greedy. If the price is really that good, take it and leave. Be gone. But for the most part, if you are negotiating in good faith and you're finding prices that are fair and reasonable, you'll do well over time and potentially create the path to future deals in the future going forward in future shows. And then you become known as somebody that people can deal with, and that may help you, with additional deals for other folks, even other dealers who may catch something that they know you like. And there you go. Hey, so-and-so's got this. You might want to check it out. You'll get referrals and things of that sort. And that's not a bad thing at all.
I go ahead, buddy.
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, we're coming up with these ways to be successful and to treat dealers with respect and to have a successful negotiation. There's one tactic that I've seen used over the years. I've heard dealers talk about it, and I've seen it done at the shop. People will come in, go through a large box, like a monster box. They'll spend forever, and they're pulling cards out, especially if the boxes, have cards and they're in sequential order. And they're pulling them, and the pile's getting bigger and bigger. And the dealer would be like, "Hey, everything going good over there? Yep, great. All right, good. Found a lot of good stuff. Great. The pile's this big." He's like, "All right, I'm good. How much do you want for this?" You go through it. You give the guy a fair price. Yeah, I can't do that. And they think that the buyer, right, the collector, the whatever, the customer, thinks they have you over a barrel. And I've actually heard them say, "Why don't sell to me for this so you don't have to put the cards away and put them all back in order again. I must have taken like 50 cards out. You're gonna have to put all those back." You want to piss somebody off, do that to them. And I have seen over the years dealers flip out, get the F out of here. I better not ever see you back at my table again, etc., etc. I had a guy recently do it to me at the shop, and I told the owner of the shop, I said, if that guy ever comes back in here and wants to look through monster boxes and pull cards, I'm not going to let them. You know, it's if you really want to tick off the dealer, try that, you know, almost like hostage taking tactic of, well, you better give them to me for what I want because you're going to have to put them all back. So that's a big no, and you will not get away with that.
There you go. So hopefully a couple of, like I said, a lot of these tips to those of you who are veteran showgoers are not going to be anything new. And that's why I tried to make that clear a couple different times. But hopefully for folks that maybe don't attend shows all the time or maybe haven't attended a show in a while, it's a good reminder of some of the basics. Because really these are basics. We're not reinventing the wheel out here. A lot of these are pretty standard things that if you've been around the block a couple of times to a lot of these shows, you've either already done or something that you're going to see the regular showgoers exercise regularly. It is pretty normal because, as I said, we're not trying to come up with these weird, wacky 4D chess tactics that are supposed to, like, you know, break the algorithm here of somebody else's negotiations. It's like, no, it's simple. It's just if you know kind of what you're willing to do, you understand what your number is, really the number you're satisfied with, and you get a gauge for where if the other person is in the same ballpark as you, then most of the time you'll be able to find your way to a number that's satisfactory. But if you're on two different planets, then then hey, figure that out as soon as you can so you can walk away and go do something else.
I will say, although this is basics and we aren't reinventing the wheel, shows themselves, again, I'll reiterate, over the past couple of years have kind of reinvented themselves because it has became a different scene. When things like pre-pandemic, it was much easier to go and buy and negotiate. During the pandemic, money was flying around everywhere. You know, it depending on what you were looking for, you might go buy a card at the show, get home, and it might have tripled in price. Who knows, right? But now, when things have went down, I am having a lot harder time because people are still wanting to price pandemic pricing.
Yeah.
Like whether they priced it then, threw it in the boxes and forgot they priced them at that or what, but they're not wanting to negotiate. And since we're talking about negotiating, like in the one example, there was a card literally you could go on eBay and hit buy it now for $599.99 or best offer, $600 or best offer, and the guy wanted 800 at the show.
Right.
And you just can't even begin to negotiate there. Like, or I love the thing now, they'll tell you, you know, oh well, this card goes for this on eBay. Look it up, and you look it up, and you're like, you're nowhere close. Like, you know, and so you do have to be careful with that. And it isn't reinventing the wheel, but the shows have changed. So,
Bobbles, how about nah, I can't sell it for that. I'm into it for more than that.
right,
It's not my fault you were an idiot and spent
exactly.
$500 on this piece of garbage during the pandemic, thinking that
Yep.
the pandemic was going to last forever somehow. You
Yep.
you spent $500 on it. I'm willing to give you 100. It's not my fault. Don't tell me you're into it too much. Too bad.
Right.
So I kind of want
Just
to. So I
because-
kind of want to. I want to
Sorry.
position that. I want to position though what he said into kind of my last thought as we'll get right about time that we're shooting for here. But this will actually lead into my last question that I want to ask you guys. Are we going to approach? So what do you think is going to be the? I won't say cutoff because that's not the right word. I'm thinking at what point does the stalemate kind of break and it forces some of these dealers who do intend to still be dealers after this to basically have to just swallow it? At what point do they just have to eat it and be done with it and be like, all right, I'll just take what's left. I'll take what I can here and then just buy back in at the lower prices and then make my money on that. Because we talked about the expo. I'll just quickly touch on the expo and then we'll talk about some of these other ones. For the expo, it's been a mixed bag depending. I've seen the ones where it was hard to move things, hard to get people to move off prices. The last one was pretty reasonable. I had very little trouble. But you never know. I expect this one, since things haven't been crazier, I expect it to be okay, but we'll have to see how it plays out. So, Bobbles, you first. Do you think it's going to continue that way where they're stuck for a while? Or do they eventually, maybe early next year or in the next couple of months, just because the stuff is collecting dust, are they eventually forced, whether they like it or not, to adjust the pricing?
So I'm going to answer this question on two parts.
Sure.
Longer term, longer, more experienced dealers, I think, will adjust and they'll survive and still go to shows, be show dealers, whatever. They've been in this for a long time. They've seen ebbs and flows. They've seen how things change and go crazy and back and all of that. Your newer dealers, there's two sides to the coin with it because just as we talked about the expense of the show goers, okay,
Mhm.
the cost it takes for someone to attend the show, the dealers have the expense of setting up at the show. You're having a clash here where it's getting expensive for people to go to the show and expensive for the dealer to set up at the show. And if deals aren't being made, then both parties are kind of probably losing interest. The dealer's not making money because he's done paid this money to set up, and people aren't buying because his prices are stupid. And this person is spending all this money to go to shows and everything else. And if they don't have the social aspect of it, like you had talked about, they just went and spent all this money to go to a museum and walk around and look at cardboard.
Mhm.
So there's like that clash there, and I think we may see, I guess to answer your question, I don't know if they will adjust.
Mhm.
I think we're also seeing something that's still new, but it's expanding, and that's the online selling of,
Mhm.
isn't I'm seeing y'all talking about ComC's doing auction stuff now. You
Yep.
got Fanatics Live doing things. eBay Live was thrown out there. You got Whatnot. You have all these live selling platforms now. I think that could be more suited for your more modern cards, where I see more of the flipper investor, whatever they want to call themselves, taking place at. But you're still going to have some longer time, experienced dealers that have been around for a while who are moving inventory. They're doing okay. They know how to negotiate. They price their stuff. I think they may stick around.
You actually led me one quick thought, and this isn't a long topic, but it's just a kind of basically a glorified yes or no. Do you think if they do find the struggle with some of these dealers who are not making that adjustment, but at the same time, if they keep running a museum, then eventually they drop out, to your point, because of the expense and because they're stuck with it? Do the show promoters who are in a position to be able to do it, but at the same time want to maintain a certain flow, do the show promoters adapt a little bit and maybe ratchet their pricing down a little bit for the tables in order to try to maintain a certain level of activity?
I'm going to say no, simply because I know Chantilly just recently raised their table prices.
Mhm. No, for sure. But I'm
Yep.
just curious because there's been two philosophical things I've talked about in the past. So I just want to touch on it quickly. I've talked about in the past how when AMG will run it'll do trade nights, but it'll also run a monthly card show. And when they're doing their card show, their philosophy was to make it more accessible. Now they're a smaller community because we're talking about Atlanta, Canada. But what they did is they expressly went to the idea of doing cheaper table prices to encourage more kind of weekend warrior type dealers who could do value boxes, which gave a little different dynamic. But you could have dealers that would have nicer stuff too. Big established shows are not going to suddenly drop to that price point. I'm not talking about that.
Right.
But I'm talking about if you're already at a super high price point and things were so hot and you were filling all the table slots and all that, but if it starts softening a little bit to the point that you're struggling to fill table slots, I'm not talking about going all the way to the bottom, but I'm saying if it costs so much for a dealer to set up that they're already behind the eight ball and sales are soft, even if their pricing isn't ridiculous, sales are still a little soft. If that's the case, then the one thing that the promoter can do, if they've got enough margin built into it, is to tweak, because you still want to get foot traffic and you still want to have dealers to help also bring foot traffic.
If it takes place, I'm going to say give it 8 months. And the reason I say that is I know Chantilly when this last show ended, if the dealers wanted to set up for the spring show, they had to pay that day. So it's not, reserve your table, pay for it at the time of the show. They have to
Mhm.
prepay that all ahead of time. I say give it 8 months because if they didn't do so well this show, maybe they didn't make the money to pay for the next one, or maybe they say, okay, let's give it another shot in the
Mhm.
spring. If they don't succeed in the spring, you may see some fallout. I think if that's how most of these shows are set up, um, then yes, it could change. But I also feel like they're increasing them because I think with the change in the market, you're getting more people trying to sell. And so there's more people wanting to set up so they can raise that price a little bit. You want to come and set up, pay us the fee.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like I said, I just put it out there as a thought because it's one of those things where there's really, as the show dealer, as the show promoter, you're trying to balance two things. You want to have enough foot traffic to leave enough potential sales for the dealers because I think people forget that for the show promoter to really be able to succeed, they want to get their money from the dealers. Yes, of course. They want to get money from ticket sales, of course. But the reality is, if people buy tickets and you get the dealers to buy the tables, but nobody is transacting, you're not going to have a show for very long. Because
Right.
eventually it's like, well, the dealers don't make any money. There's no reason for them to keep setting up at the show. And then vice versa. There's no dealers at the show. There's no material. There's no refresh material. There's no reason for people to come in and check out the show because there's nothing there. So
Yep.
you want to make sure you have both. It's not good enough to just have foot traffic if there's nothing worthwhile in dealer showcases. So you want to a certain degree to help the dealers succeed because if they don't, if none of them make any money, well then there's no reason for anybody to come back. And if there's no dealers at the show, no cards there, there's no reason for people to buy tickets to go to a show. Go ahead, Eric.
Yep.
It's not just it's just the other side of the coin. It's not just greed from the show promoter wanting to make more. Think of the truly the billions upon billions of dollars that were lost at hotels. That there's because most of these shows are at hotels, right, on the Sunday or something, or a convention center for the bigger shows. They lost billions of dollars, not just from card shows, but from you know uh, business conventions and business meetings, and they're trying to make their money back. So now, when now that things are kind of quote back to normal, a card promoter is like, "Hey, Holiday Inn, I want to come in on Sunday and have a 50 table show. What is it going to cost me? It's going to cost you more than it did pre-pandemic because our industry is billions of dollars behind schedule."
Yeah, fair. I think, and I'll kind of wind it down on this. I think an interesting example of kind of that playing out almost the way you were talking about was the CSC guys who run a couple of these different regional local shows here. And I've seen a couple of different variants of it. I got a chance to attend a few of them, and they've done okay. But there was one where it might have been the weekend or it might have been the location. It might have been a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But they ran one of them. They run a bunch of them in a convention center here, which is actually out of the way, but it's actually not in a bad spot. It actually gets pretty good traffic. But then they ran another one in a beautiful hotel. I actually stayed at the hotel. It was excellent. A very enjoyable stay at the hotel. But I will say the foot traffic was terrible. It was absolutely atrocious. And they just were not able. But imagine the rental of that room for a really nice hotel and like convention center thing they had going on there. And then this other one that is just a convention center. The facilities are okay, but it's not like to that same level. But by contrast, they were able to the place was full. They had waves of people come in and out, and like so, probably the dealers did a lot better on that other show. And I'm sure that the rental was probably a lot more affordable in that other one, and they were able to run people all the way through, sell tickets and everything. So, which one do you think is more likely for them to come back to as a venue? It's the
Yeah,
same show promoters and a lot of the same dealers, but one of them was a really good experience, and one of them was just they were kind of standing around staring at each other, and there wasn't a lot going on.
Yep.
absolutely. I know we got the expo coming up. Think of the expo center. I mean the international center. I think it's its
Yeah,
official
it's called the
title.
International Center. Yep.
Them alone. Think of how many millions they lost in the pandemic. Their whole thing is we're a big giant building that people come together in large groups and talk to each other. That wasn't happening. They lost millions of dollars just the international center. So I can't say for sure, but something tells me getting a table at the expo this year is probably more expensive than it was in 2018.
Well, compared to 2018, for sure, absolutely.
And
I think what's interesting,
inflation, blah blah blah, but inflation comes with the pandemic.
yeah,
So,
I think what's funny though is that I remember that one of the halls, and I promise this will be the last story because we're at time now. But it made me laugh because I thought about it. One of the halls they weren't able to get because I think it was Walmart had leased it out as long-term storage.
yeah.
So but they were able to do it. But so like Walmart has enough money, they don't care. They just like, yeah, you got space, fantastic. Can we put pallets of stuff, pallets of crap? Yes, you certainly can. Look, your money spends good too, Walmart. No
Yeah.
problem.
It was actually all of the blasters and megas that everybody was looking for.
Yeah.
They were in the warehouse there at the center.
Yeah.
If y'all had just gone to Hall 7,
Yep.
y'all would have seen all the blasters. They were all there.
That was
You
the
didn't even know.
overflow
Yeah,
for all of the
exactly.
product.
Exactly. But hopefully in the course of our various ramblings here, you were able to get something out of it. We did do a little bit talking about it. Don't overthink a lot of these things. I guess here are the takeaways, just as we finish up. The takeaways are, if you are going to go to one of these bigger shows, do start the planning as early as you reasonably can. It will pay dividends if you're able to do that. Prepare your travel accommodation, whatever that's going to be. Try to check out the show information ahead of time. I gave you the simple example. Something as stupid as going on there and ordering the tickets ahead of time, you could save, $20, $30. Who cares? Well, 20, 30, that's 20, 30 more dollars in your pocket. Knowing the layout of the convention center, whatever relative to it. Well, then don't eat at the convention. Go just outside and go and have one of these eating establishments. It'll be cheaper and you'll probably get better food out of it. And that'll keep you fueled up for when you're doing the convention. Get to know some folks, network, socialize a little bit. It'll pay dividends from the perspective of you'll have extra sets of eyes. Maybe you'll get a chance to get a better deal. Knowing some of these dealers ahead of time, they might know your tendencies and be more willing to accommodate and work with you, knowing that this won't be the last time you guys do a deal. The next show that you go to, there may be another opportunity, and maybe that'll get you better deals each time. And
just my number one to close off on my end of it.
By Jason Robertson?
No. This is a serious one. Serious note.
All right.
Set yourself a budget. Set yourself a budget. Don't go in there and if you say I can take $3,000 with me, but you see something that's going to put you over that budget, don't have the FOMO, because go have fun. Don't exceed your budget, because later on you're going to regret it, or you're going to get underwater. You're going to end up having to sell that item that you got so excited in that moment that you had, and it will just kill the experience for you. So seriously, know your finances, like Eric mentioned. Set yourself a budget for spending at the show. Have fun and stick to your budget.
Yeah,
very nice.
You don't want to go in debt over a hobby.
Yeah,
you don't want to get divorced, lose your house, not be able to pay your bills. Whatever it is. Buy your kids, new school clothes next year. Whatever.
Eric, if I'm willing to sacrifice your marriage, that should be my right. I am willing to sacrifice your marriage and your finances to get some sweet cards. Some sweet. Bobbles, this man is being selfish. I am fully prepared to completely sacrifice his marriage and his relationship with his kids and all the rest of the crap he was talking about. That should be my right. If I have that option, then damn it, that's what I want to do. Come on, Eric. Stop being selfish. Think of others. We're approaching the holiday season. Stop thinking of yourself and think of others.
You're right. That was selfish. I'm sorry. The dealers need my money, and I'm willing to give it to them.
It's the least you can do. Keep the economy going, Eric. The economy is suffering because of people like you. Not thinking of others.
I'm going to save this hobby single-handedly. Don't you worry.
As you should. As you should. And on that bombshell, thank you, Bobbles. That was some good sage words. Eric, even you had some solid words. We'll just say words. You had words during that. So hopefully you guys got something out of it. We mostly had some fun with it. We wanted to talk a little bit about, since we've got some upcoming card shows. The next episode will probably be a little bit more expo centric. We did talk a little bit and gave some examples, but we'll probably be a little bit more specific and touch on some other things related to it. But this is more of a general, some tips that we can offer. Oh, and wear comfortable shoes, of course.
Oh, well, yeah.
Comfortable. Yeah,
And
got
I
to do.
will, when we get to the expo, I'll try to have a list prepared or something of, Jason Robertson cards that you should be on the lookout for if you are attending the expo, just to give some helpful advice for expo goers. Okay. I will do my homework for that. So I'll make sure to not let folks down.
Amazing. And the knowing eyes of Favre joined us again this evening now through the beautiful overlay here. Fantastic. Eric is appreciating it. So with that said, Bobbles and Ball cards, links and contact points will be in the description. More videos coming up on the channel and live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where it is at least 5% less serious and to the point than what this is. At least 5%. Oftentimes, even 6 or 7% less.
And I am 5% angry.
These are all facts. These are all facts. Also, like I said, next week's episode should be at the normal time, but then next week will be Expo Week, like Shark Week, but lamer. And the podcast episode should go off as normal, but then the rest of the schedule will change up a little bit. Stick around. If you're subscribed to the channel, you will know more about that as we get closer to it. And there'll probably be some kind of an impromptu live stream early in the week, probably on the Tuesday. But again, you will be notified if you're already subscribed to the channel. Other than that, for the folks on the audio version, hopefully this was helpful. Do leave some kind of a 5-star review of anything if you're capable of doing that on the YouTube. If you could like, we appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you next time. Thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.